our estimated return would be 2,556 euros. A very important thing that a lot of people do is they provide assistance to their parents and family members back home. You are supposed to get an energy price allowance. Many students do not have this certificate or they lose this information. What they can do is, hey friends, in today's video, I'm going to share how to submit a tax return in Germany using a web app called Smart Steuer. To get started, you can use the first link in the description below. Or if you want to know more about Smart Steuer, you can visit snfinance.com and scroll down to this article where I have shared 5 of the best tax return softwares in Germany. Once you click this link, you will come to this page. Now you have an option of using multiple languages. In this video, I'm going to share everything in English, so I'm going to select English language. In most cases, you will be a new user, so here we're going to select I'm new here. But if you already made an account with Smart Steuer, you can use your old account as well. So we're going to click on I'm new here. If you're interested, you can watch a tutorial from Smart Steuer. Obviously, it's going to be in German. We're going to click on further because I'm going to explain everything you need to know about this software. The next option is which year we want to submit this tax return for. We have usually 4 years which we can submit our tax return if you are not obliged to submit one. If you are obliged to submit one, obviously you should have submitted your tax return for 2019, 2020 or 2021. And if you are not obliged, obviously you can submit 4 years in the past. So the option of 4 years which is given here. Another thing that I want to mention is that even if you are obliged to submit a tax return, you can still submit a tax return for 2021 if you submit it with the help of a tax consultant. So please keep that in mind. But in this case, we are going to submit for 2022. So we click that and proceed forward. Obviously, the information that we are going to provide in the tax return will have sensitive information like our name, date of birth, address, and many important information. So for this purpose, we will need to submit or accept the data protection that is we are providing our information to Smart Steuer. So we're going to click on further. Next option is our marital status. As we are submitting a tax return for 2022, this will be applicable for the year 2022. So if you got married in 2023 or if your marital status changed in 2023, then this will not apply in our tax return. So make sure you give your proper marital status in 2022. In this tutorial, I'll just select single. Next, we are going to provide our name. So I'll give my first and last name. After that, if you have any children, you can add the information by clicking yes. If you don't have any, then you can simply click no and proceed further. In the next option, we have our revenue streams. So if you are a full-time employee, short-time employee, you can select this option. Next, if you're a soldier, pension or retiree, if you got a sick pay, I'll talk about that later on, parental allowance, company pension or other replacement. So in many cases, people who receive sick pay or unemployment benefits, they are also obliged to submit a tax return. Additionally, if you're getting parental allowance or maternity allowance, you're also obliged to submit a tax return. I've seen many students who come to Germany and think that they are students and they have 4 years to submit their tax return, or they are not obliged to submit a tax return and they get unemployment benefits or parental allowance. In many cases, they do become obliged, and once they submit their tax return, they get a hefty challan or a hefty penalty for not submitting a tax return on time. So please be careful in this condition. So in our case, we are going to simply select employee and proceed further. Smart Steuer also has an option of submitting tax return if you are self-employed or if you have some additional income sources, for example, commercial enterprise, photovoltaic system, or working as a trainee or volunteer. In this video, I'm going to select none of them and proceed forward. For people who are getting an income from renting or leasing, they can select this leasing or renting option, as this will submit an Annex V. Or if you're getting capital gains, or if you have invested in stocks, cryptocurrencies or something like that, then we're going to click on capital assets. In this video, I will cover capital assets. So I'm going to click on capital assets and proceed further. How did I receive, or how did you receive your income? Did you do a mini job, short-term employment or temporary employment? Yes or no? Select whichever is applicable. Employment abroad, foreign taxes or credit deduction, or any other income. So a good thing with Smart Steuer is whichever option you are thinking about or looking at, you'll get some additional information on the right hand side. For example, here we get some information like if your employer has made a flatter taxation, you do not have to enter your mini job. At the same time, however, it also means that no advertising costs may be recorded that were incurred, flat rate tax, mini job. So any helpful information or tips that you need are going to be provided on the right hand side. So we are going to select private sales transaction, which will include cryptocurrencies. So if you have also incurred any losses, you can enter your losses separately. For example, from previous years to offset your charges. This is where you're going to submit your tax loss carry forward, which I have discussed in detail in many of my videos. But a simple summary would be that if you have submitted a tax return in the past and have gotten losses and you did not pay enough taxes but your expenses were higher, then you get a tax loss settlement once you submit your tax return and get a Steuerbescheid or your tax settlement. So this tax loss certificate will be provided in this loss section. We are not going to select losses, but as I said, be sure to check if you have any tax loss certificates. So we're going to proceed. Here we're going to provide our date of birth. Next is our current residential address. So at the time that you're submitting your tax return, this is the address that we're going to provide in our section here. So many people change their addresses, they move houses, especially students, they have multiple houses at a time. But at the time of submitting this tax return, this is the address that we're going to write down. Once you have added all of your information, click on proceed. In the religion section, you can select any of the options that are provided, or you can simply select other or not subjected to church tax if you do not want to mention which religion you are having. After selecting, proceed further. In the career and study option, we have multiple options, whether you had studied as a student or were you a professional. So if you are just a professional, you can simply provide the name of that profession. It doesn't have to be a specific name. For example, I am a research associate, so I'm going to provide research associate. But if you are an engineer or software developer, web developer, anything, you can simply provide that. And if you did study, you can select this option as learning at colleges and universities or equivalent academies and technical colleges counts as study. This also includes dual universities and art colleges as well as vocational and technical academies. But in this tutorial, I will not cover the study part. So simply click on proceed further. So if you have any disabilities, you can provide information about that disability or any disabilities that you have and proceed further. Now in the survivor's benefit, for example, if you are getting any benefits as a survivor under the Federal Pension Act from statutory accident insurance, you need to provide that. In most cases, people will not have that. So we're going to select no and proceed further. So in the next option, we have employee income or the wage tax certificate. Usually you receive one Steuerbescheid or tax certificate from your employer. This certificate is received for every single employer that you have. So if you did 2 jobs, you should have 2 of these certificates. And if you did just one, obviously you'll have just one. Many students do not have this certificate or they lose this information. What they can do is try to contact the HR department of that company to get this certificate for them. If they are not able to contact the HR department, they can simply go to the Finanzamt and ask for their information. Now this seems very odd that we are providing information to the Finanzamt through our tax return and we are still asking for the information from the Finanzamt. It's pretty weird, but the option or the main reason for providing a tax return is that we are telling the Finanzamt or the tax authorities is that we have certain income and we have certain expenses that are related to this income. Those expenses need to be either work related or study related or both, depending on what you're doing or what you did in that year. And we say to the Finanzamt or the tax authorities in Germany that our expenses that were related to our work or study were X amount and our income was Y amount. But based on our expenses, the amount that was taxed from our income, that is Y, should be reduced. So we are providing this information in our tax return. So at the end of the day, the tax return or the Finanzamt calculates our study or work related expenses. They check our taxes that we have paid and they assess what taxes should we be paying based on our expenses. So that is why we are providing our tax return information to the tax office or the Finanzamt. So depending on the number of jobs or number of income tax statements, you can select whichever option is applicable to you and then proceed further. In this example, I'm just going to select one option. If you're unsure on how your tax statement is looking like, you can simply click on the sample tax certificate and you'll come to this image. Now, something similar to this should be provided by your employer. One thing that we need to remember or should take care of are the numbers that are provided here. So it's going to be from 1 to 34, and many of these options are simply going to be blank or not provided by your provider, by your employee. Doesn't matter. We just need to see all of the information that is provided and just put the specific numbers from this Steuerbescheinigung or tax statement into our tax return, which I'll show you in a couple of minutes. First, we're going to provide our employer name. In the professional group, we can simply select drop-down list. So if you are an employee, social security free activist, if you have a GmbH, if you're a judge, so many options are given there, or if you're a student, you can select this option and proceed forward. So we're going to select employee subject to social insurance. So as I mentioned, this certificate is for the whole year. So we're going to select whole year. So from 01/01 until the date is going to be 31st of December for that specific month. In the next option, we're going to select our tax class. As you might already know, there are 6 tax classes in Germany, and these are the details for each individual. In our example, we're going to select tax class number 1, which is applicable for people who are unmarried and do not have any children. Now, obviously, you might have multiple tax classes throughout the year. In this option, we're going to select the latest that we had in the year. So, for example, by the start of the year, you had tax class number 1, but then you got married and your spouse came to Germany and it changed from tax class number 1 to tax class number 4. Then you submitted your documents and again, you changed your tax class from tax class number 4 to tax class number 3 because your spouse was not working. So in this case, you had tax class change twice in that year. So from 1 to 4 and then 4 to 3. In this option, we are going to provide 3 in this case because this was the latest that we had. In another case, if someone was already in tax class number 3, for some reason their spouse left Germany or they were separated, now their tax class would change from 3 to some other one. Let's assume it was from 3 to 1. Now, the information or the tax class that we're going to select in this case would be tax class number 1, as that was the latest or the last tax class that we had in that case. I'm going to fill in all of the information from 3 till 34 based on the tax certificate that we got from our employer. Remember, if you do not have anything written in the Lohnsteuerbescheinigung, you can simply leave that empty. Do not try to fill in any zeros or random numbers. Once you've finished filling out this information, click on proceed further. Now, as a student or an employee in 2022, you were supposed to get an energy price allowance. If you got this, you can simply click yes, proceed further. But if you did not get this, you can select no and give out all of the information. There were, however, people who did not get this energy price allowance because they were not registered as an employee before the 1st of September 2022. So if you did not get this amount, do write down no and provide further information. But we did get our allowance, so we're going to select yes and proceed further. Now here we get a small overview of all of the information that we did provide in the previous section. You can have a look again, and this is usually for people who had multiple employments and multiple certificates. This should sum up all of that information. So make sure you've provided all of the correct information and then proceed further if you're satisfied with all of this calculation. In this section, if you as an employee want to provide further information, you can explain this using the following fields. For example, income without income tax, expenses allowance for part-time activities, application for determination of employee or saving bonus, further residence if you did cross-border commuting to France, Switzerland or Austria, compensation for not taxed at reduced tax, or record costs for company car. If any of these is applicable, simply select that option and proceed further. In this example, I will not select any of these and proceed further. Now we're going to come to the advertising costs and provide all of our expenses as an employee or a student, depending on what you have selected. So, did you have work trips? Did you have work equipment? Were there any training costs? Were there travel expenses and additional subsequent expenses? Did you have a workspace specifically in your house or any other place that you rented for this workspace? Or if you want to select the home office flat rate. So in this, we're going to select 4 of these options and proceed further. But obviously, depending on your case, you can select whichever is applicable for you and proceed further. Next, we can select travel to work as a temporary worker, contribution to professional associations or unions or any vereins that you are part of, cleaning of workloads. So if you had your work clothes professionally cleaned, you can select this option. Double household keeping is for people who have two houses registered in Germany. One is their primary residence and the secondary is their work residence. So for example, people who have their family or even if they don't have a family, that they have one major residence, and for work purposes or for study purposes, they do move to another city and they have to register a place there. So people with multiple houses can select this dual housekeeping. If you had any application costs, you can select this option. In many cases, students and employees do have this application cost. Do select this. If you had any moving expenses, for example, if you were living in one city and you got a job offer or a master's thesis offer or a practicum offer, and you moved from this city based on your work or thesis, you can select the following option and have moving expenses. So we're going to select this moving as well. Obviously, phone and internet costs are going to be there. Tax return costs. So a good thing is that whichever costs that you had to submit a tax return for the previous year, you can submit those information or you can submit those costs in our current tax return as well. For example, if you submitted the tax return for 2021 with the help of a lawyer or with the help of a web app like this app is going to cost you about 39.99 euros. In my case, I submitted my tax return for 2021 with the help of Wundertax, which cost me 34.99 euros. So I can use those expenses and put in my 2022 tax return. If you submitted your tax return with the help of a lawyer or a tax consultant, obviously those costs were higher, but you can still add those information or those costs in our tax information. And if you had any other further advertising costs, you can select this option and proceed further. In the commuter allowance part, we have various options. For example, if we had worked for one employer and we were just living in one place, we would have just one option. If we had multiple employers or if we had multiple residences in that year, we can have multiple periods. So let's take an example. If you had two jobs, for the first 6 months, you had one job. For the next 6 months, you had another job, but you remained in that same house. So you'll have two specific periods. But if you had one job and you change your houses 3 times in a year, you'll have 3 periods of calculation. So make sure you do those calculations depending on how many residences or how many jobs you had in that year. In our example, we're just going to select one and proceed further. In this section, we're going to select the distances between our apartment or residence to the workplace. So we're going to select the place of work or collection point or extensive field of activity, depending on whichever is applicable for you. In this example, we're going to select the place of work. So let's give out some address that is responding to our work. Then we're going to select the whole year or depending on the time period that you worked in that place. Next, we are going to select how many days we work in that institute or our workplace. In most cases, it's going to be 5 days a week. So we're going to select 5 days. Now, depending on the number of holidays, sick leaves, home office or business trips, we want to provide that information. So as you can see here is most of the people in Germany have at least 20 holidays and many people have around 29 to 30 holidays. On top of that, there are going to be business trips, sick leaves or any home office days. So you need to calculate all of those and provide here. In our example, let's assume we had 30 days of holidays. 10 days are going to be for business trips and sick leaves, and again 10 days are going to be for home office. So we're going to select in total 50 days. You can enter the home working days in the home office flat rate area. Please also enter the days you work from home during the specified work period. Based on our calculations, we visited our workplace for 210 days. So let's assume if you had 60 days of home office instead of 10, this is going to be 100. So we provide this. So depending on our calculation, now we have worked for 160 days in the office and 100 days were either home office, sick leave or business trips. Now, if you had several employers, for example, travel from first workplace, work A, to first workplace B of another employer and you did not return home in between, then you can provide yes. But in most cases, they are going to be a single employer at a specific time. So you're going to place no in many cases. We are also going to select no and we're going to proceed further. In the next section, we're going to provide the one-way distance per working day from our house or our residence. You can select the map and see the accepted route. There are going to be multiple routes, but you can select whichever is applicable, and the distance is going to be calculated for you. If you had a specific number of kilometers that you traveled by car, or if you had a collective transport, for example, an employer transport, or if you traveled with public transport, you can provide that information here. So we are going to provide all of the information via the public transport or bicycle, or depending on other sources. But in our case, let's assume we had traveled all of this distance through public transport. So many employers do provide a specific amount for travel expenses to their employees. In our case, we do not have any such information. If you're not sure if your employer did or did not provide this to you, you can simply go and view your Lohnsteuerbescheinigung, and in the line number 17 or 18, you would have some numbers. This would indicate that your employer did reimburse some amount for you, and if this section was remaining empty, then this means your employer did not provide any assistance in travel reimbursements. So we are going to select no or no information and proceed further. In the next field, we are going to provide expenses for public transport, flight or ferry costs. So expenditures for journey by public transport, flight or ferry costs in 2022, we're going to select here. We're going to go and record in table. Here we're going to provide the information about the type of public transport that we use. We can either select bus, train, plane or a ferry. We can provide bus. So the number of travels using that public transport can be provided here. So let's assume we did 50. For each individual travel, how much was the cost? Let's assume it was 5 euros. Next, we're going to click yes to accept those costs. Let's assume you also had train costs. So we're going to select Bahn. Number of travels, again, it would be 50 or depending on how much. In this example, let's assume each travel cost was 10 euros. And then we're going to select yes. And here we have a sample calculation of 750 euros for that year. So as I mentioned, depending on your travels, you can add every single information that is applicable for you and select OK once you've calculated all of those. Now, Smart Steuer has given us an option of create an account and make a backup of our data. This is absolutely essential if you want to proceed with Smart Steuer, but if you're just doing some calculations, you can skip this for now and proceed further. If you had any travel expenses for work-related external work, then you can select this option, but for many, this is going to be not applicable, so we're going to select 0 external activities and proceed further. Next, we have application costs. So this is where you enter the costs that were incurred when you were looking for a job, an internship, thesis, or a practicum. So any specific costs can be provided here. These costs include costs for newspapers, magazines, advertisement that you have placed on yourself, internet access costs, telephone charges, specialist books on specific applications, all of the materials, for example, folders, photos, copies, post-its, etc. You can provide all of those expenses in this section. Now, trips to job interviews also count. So those are going to be work-related external activities, and those can be deducted, and these are going to be charged per 30 cents per kilometer driven to trips with your own car, and you must provide evidence if there is a lot of cost. You can provide detailed information for every single expense that you incurred for application costs and add all of those here. If you had lower fees or if you had lower expenses in application costs, you can use this section. I would always recommend, if you had multiple applications, use this above section to provide detailed information for every single application that you did. You can use the table here, the number of application with folder, without folder, if you had any further interviews, if you had any other costs, you can provide every single thing with this software which is here. But in our example, we're going to provide a simple total cost, which is, let's assume 100 euros in our case, and proceed further. As I mentioned earlier in the video, if you did any relocation for your work or your study purposes, you can provide all of this information in this section. And if you're getting value from this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to share this video with your friends and family, as it will definitely help them out in this complicated matter. Coming back to the relocation expenses, if you had multiple moves, you can select as many moves that you did in that specific year. In our example, we're going to select just one move and proceed further. So in the moving cost, If you moved out of Germany, you can provide that information, but it's unlikely in many cases. In our case, we're going to select move to Germany, even if it's within Germany or if you moved from another country to Germany. So move date, let's assume we moved on the 1st of March. So we're going to select C1. Next, you need to provide the reason for moving. Now, for professional reasons, moving services can be taken into account as household related services in your private expenses area. So select whichever option is applicable for you. Next, we're going to provide any supporting documents. If you do not have any receipts, simply click this option. Even then, you can claim certain costs or flat rates. But let's assume you have receipts. In the next option, we can select any moving expenses. So cost for finding and arranging accommodation, travel expenses on the moving day, transportation costs, double rent payments, additional lessons for children. If you were moving from one city to another, there were some costs that were associated with your children. Any other specific costs which you can provide proof can be given here. So let's assume we do not have any receipts. So we're going to select that and proceed further. In this section, we provide how many people moved along with you. Here we need to state how many people, including you, have moved into the new household. In addition to relatives or persons related by marriage, please enter other persons who have moved with you because you need them for professional or health reasons. This includes householders. So be sure to add the number of people. In our case, we're going to provide just one person. And did you have your own apartment before you moved? Depending on your case, you can add whichever option is applicable for you. And if you had multiple entries, you can select here to enter or manage multiple entries. Next, we have the training costs. So any vocational trainings, long distance trainings, or computer courses, language courses that you did in the time period, you can claim all of those expenses in this section. Let's assume we did a German language course, which was just one course in the year 2022. So we're going to select just one entry and proceed further. You can provide a self-determined total amount, or you can provide all of the detailed information regarding the course. But for simplicity case, we're going to select self-determined total amount and proceed further. Let's say the type and reason for training was German language B1 and it cost us total 200 euros. In the refund section, we can provide any refunds that we got from the government if we applied for resources or support from the government, or if your company supported you, you will need to provide the refund here. If there was no refund, simply leave this blank and proceed further. In the home office section, we need to provide how many days we worked in home office. In our calculations, we provided 30 days. So for each individual day, we are getting 5 euros and a total of 120 days can be calculated in our tax return in Germany for the year 2022. So we provide 30 and proceed further. In the next section, we provide telecommunication costs. So depending on the number of records you want to provide, for example, if you had multiple contracts within the year, if you were using multiple telecommunication companies, you can select a higher number of connections. But again, we're going to select just one for simplicity case. If we use this telecommunication cost as professional or personal use, we can give a specific amount based on the percentage we use. Let's assume we had self-determined total cost of 50 euros per year, or let's make it 10 euros per month. So it's going to be 120 euros per year. And this telecommunication was 100% used for business purposes. So we're going to write 100%. If you use this number for personal and business use, you can always determine how much time you used it for personal and business use. So depending on how you did use it, you can write the percentage here and proceed forward. In this section, we are going to provide any costs that were associated to tax preparation. For example, if you used a tax consultant or a tax return software to submit your tax return in the year 2022 for the year 2021, you can add all of this information in this section. So in my example, I used a tax return software called WonderTax, which cost me 39.99 euros. So I'm going to write that information here. If you were providing any contributions to the Income Tax Assistant Association, you can write that down here. If you bought any tax literature, you can also provide that expense here. Or if you got a tax consultant, you can provide the invoice from your tax consultant here. In this section, we can provide additional advertisement costs, which we can select from this table of records and from this drop-down menu. So you have many options you can select, and depending on whichever is applicable for you. For example, if you were a student and you got a loan from the BAföG and you are paying interest on that loan, you can provide that information. Or for example, you got a Schufa Auskunft for your job purposes. I don't know, it might be for a specific reason, or if you got workplace glasses, you can provide that expense, or you can simply select the most common options from this menu and provide information from here. So as I said, no information from our side, we're going to select proceed further. In the next section, we're going to provide our accounting fees. You can write down 16 euros as account management fee without any proof, or you can enter a higher amount if you have proof. However, if you have higher management fees, you can only deduct the portion that relates to professional booking. So if you have professional and private bookings, you'll need to separate all of that information. But let's assume we do not have any proofs, so we're going to provide 16 euros per year. Next, we come to capital assets section. Here we can provide information about the profits or loss that we get from stocks or ETFs. So depending on the number of brokers that you're using, you can select the number of certificates. As you know, on my channel, I talk a lot about Scalable Capital, Trade Republic and eToro. Trade Republic and Scalable Capital automatically handle your taxes, but they do provide a tax settlement by the end of the first quarter of the year. So for the year of 2022, you should already have a tax settlement by the end of first quarter. Interestingly enough, eToro has also started providing tax statement from the year 2022. So you should have a tax statement from eToro as well this year. All of the information that is provided in the tax statement from Scalable Capital or Trade Republic or even eToro should be the same. So for simplicity, I'll just select one tax statement and proceed further. So in the first section, you provide the designation of the bank and account or custody account or description of investment income. In this case, let's say Trade Republic. Similar to the Lohnsteuerbescheinigung, the tax certificate from Trade Republic, Scalable Capital or eToro should have a section that should be provided with details with the number on the left, the amount in terms of euros on the right. So make sure to fill out the information in the correct way. I'll provide all of the information for myself and proceed forward. As I've mentioned in many of my videos that you should set up a savers lump sum amount by going in the taxes section of Trade Republic or Scalable Capital. This helps you get a tax-free allowance of 1,000 euros as an individual and 2,000 euros if you have a partner. So depending on whether or not you recorded all of your investment income, you can select whichever option is applicable for you. If you did not recognize all of your investment income, you can provide further information here. So we're going to select I have recorded all of my income and proceed further. Smart Steuer also checks whether your individual tax rate is lower than 25%. To do this, you must record all of your capital gains. You can have tax withholding checked for certain capital gains. So again, select whichever is applicable for you. In the next section, we have an option to select income from private transaction sales, which includes land or equivalent rights, determination results, cryptocurrencies or other economic goods. So we are going to select the cryptocurrencies option and proceed further. In this section, we are going to provide details for all of our cryptocurrencies, sales or holdings. As you might already know that holding a cryptocurrency for more than a year and selling it after that makes this cryptocurrency sale free of taxes. So if you, for example, if you bought Bitcoin in the end of 2020 and you sold it at the end of 2021, then this sale, if a profit was included or if a profit was involved, would be tax-free. That is why providing information of our holdings can help us determine our tax-free sale of cryptocurrencies. So in the holdings of cryptocurrency section, we will provide all of the assets that we have had before or as of 31st of December 2020. Here we will provide the amount of Bitcoin. So let's assume we had 0.001 units of Bitcoin. So we'll add that. Then let's assume we also had some Ripple. For the sake of simplicity, let's say we had 1 Ethereum. So we add that and click OK. Now in the cryptocurrency trades, we can provide all of the information. For example, the buying and the selling, the date of purchase or date of sale, depending on which option we select. Here we provide the amount of cryptocurrency, then the cryptocurrency itself, rate in euros and fees in euros. So let's assume you bought 0.01 Bitcoin on the 1st of January 2022. The rate in euros you have to record per unit of cryptocurrency. So go in your crypto trading platform and check the price for the cryptocurrency on that specific date, or you can also look into coin marketplace or any other cryptocurrency tracking platform to get the information. Let's assume this price was 56,000 for a single unit of Bitcoin. So for us, this will be 560 euros. Here in the fee section, you provide all of the fees for the transaction that you did. So depending on the trading platform that you used, let's assume you use Binance and our fee was €1. So we have filled out this section and we can provide any other sales or purchases individually within this attachment. Next, we can provide any advertising expenses. Again, we can provide all of the individual information. For example, if you bought literature to understand how cryptocurrencies work, or if you bought a hardware wallet to store the cryptocurrencies, or you can write down any specific expenses concerning advertisement costs of cryptocurrencies. Once you filled out all of this information, be sure to cover every single individual trade and every single asset separately. Once you've done that, click on next. After that, we come to private expenses. In this section, we can provide information about retirement options, donations, any vocational trainings that we've done, residential care, maintenance payments to the needy, energy savings measures for the building. Now, a very important thing that a lot of people do is they provide assistance to their parents and family members back home. So this is going to be something that we're going to cover in this video. We're also going to select the vocational training cost. Firstly, we're going to see any health and care insurances. In 2022, government insurance or the statutory health insurance, you can select this option. If not, then you can select whichever is appropriate for you. You can also select the contributions of health and long-term care insurance if you are providing for another person. But we are not going to select this option and proceed further. Here we are going to provide contribution as an employee, contribution as a pensioner, or contribution as an optional or supplementary insurance. We've already provided this information in the earnings section as an employee, so this is already put in. But if you have missed out on anything, you can also provide the information later on. So you can proceed further into the next section. So here in this insurance table, you can provide any additional insurances that you have bought in this section. So for example, if you bought liability insurance, accidental insurance, and many others, you can provide all of those insurance details individually using this option. In the vocational training section, you can provide information about any vocational trainings that you got in that year, which can be deductible up to a maximum amount of 6,000 euros. Vocational trainings include initial professional training or first degree that does not take place within an employment relationship. So from the drop-down menu, you can see which options are suggested for you, or you can put in the individual details as provided here. So here we do not have anything, so we'll proceed further. Next, this is very important. We are going to provide information about the maintenance declaration. I have a detailed video on what is needed in a maintenance declaration. You can pause this video, watch this maintenance declaration video here if you want to know more. But a summary for that video is you can support your parents, your parents-in-law, your spouse, and your children that are living in another country. Here you need to provide the number of households that are being supported. So if you're supporting your parents, it will be a single household, or if you're supporting your parents and your spouse which is living in another house, it will be 2 houses. But you can always add or remove further entries in the next page. So here we have this one household. You can add or remove all of those entries. So we're going to click on edit for the first house. So here you provide the address details, zip code, and place for one of the households. So let's assume I'm supporting someone who is living on this address. Select yes if you live in this household with the person in need. It is established in your favor that maintenance expenses for this person amounts for a maximum of 10,343 euros. Obviously, if you're supporting someone who's living outside Germany, you won't be living with them, so you select no. Select the country of outside and the number of people in that household. So let's say there are 2 people in this household that you are supporting. So click on next. Here you provide the details for the maintenance payments. So if you're providing them for the whole year, here you can select if the payments were used to pay off debt, yes or no. In our case, we select no. And then we add the information of maintenance by bank or postal transfer, maintenance by handing over cash, or maintenance when family goes home to spouse. You can select whichever option is applicable for you. Be sure to check out my video with details for maintenance declaration, because in that video I also mention a specific form which you need to get it signed and notarized. So let's assume we send payment by a bank transfer. You can add the information. So let's assume we provided our father and sent it to a bank, which is, let's assume, Habib Bank. The number of time we sent a specific amount, let's say we sent in 100 euros per month. So that would be 12 times in the year. This will be written here and we select yes. If the distribution was differently, then you can provide every single detail in a separate option. So let's say if you provided funds to your father, which was 500 euros once, then you provide 500 here. Number was 1, so you provided it once. Similarly, if you paid different options, so you can say differently. Make sure you provide all of the details and read the comments that are provided in addition to the specific column, so that you do not miss out on any specific detail and do not provide any incorrect information. Once you're done, click on further and this will be added. Next, we provide the details for the person that we are supporting. So you provide the first name and the last name, their profession, if there is any, their marital status, if they're single, widow or divorced, the family relationship to you. So as I mentioned, you can support your mother, father, child, grandfather, grandmother, grandchild, and you can also support the parents of your spouse as well, and others as mentioned here. So you can select whichever is applicable for you. Whichever period did you support them? In our case, we provide the whole year. Was the supported person having their own income? Yes, then provide it here. If not, then no. Was the payment contribution for basic health and long-term care insurance? Was the supported person supported by any other person? Yes or no? And then the affiliation of household, was the supported person did not live in a specified household for the whole year, so you can provide that information. As discussed in my other video, the declaration of maintenance is also essential, so click that and proceed further. So next we provide the fortune or assets of the assisted person. So if the assets of the supported person were not negligible, maintenance cannot be deducted. Assets in Germany are not negligible if the assets of the supported person were at least 15,500 euros. This amount doubles for spouses living in the same household. So if your parents live together and if their assets are less than 31,000 euros, then you can obviously support them. But if the assets are more than that, you can select here and provide all of the specific information. In our case, we assume the assets are less than that, so we do not tick here. So we're not going to select this option and proceed further. As we selected in the beginning, we assume that they got a loan from the government in Germany. So you can provide all of the specific details in this section. In this section, we provide exceptional costs. For example, if there were medical expenses for necessary treatments, disabilities or funerals, or if you had costs related to flood disaster or any environmental damage, or did you have legal cost or cost for an integration course. So if you had any of those, provide them here. If not, then you can leave those as no and proceed further. Again, this was selected in the beginning. For example, did you get maintenance work done in your home or your apartment? Did you get your household cleaned from an agency, for example, a gardening agency or cleaning agency? You can provide that information. Or if you had any household employees and you paid them, was it a mini job or did you have any domestic workers? If yes, then select yes and provide all of those information. If not, then simply select no and proceed further. In the next section, you can also provide any private expenses. For example, did you provide spouse maintenance in case of separation or divorce? Was church tax involved? Was inheritance tax involved? And many others. If anything is applicable for you, simply select that and provide that information. If not, then select none of them and proceed further. So now you have provided all of the private expenses. In the final section, you can select whether or not you have paid any advanced payments for tax. Should the tax assessment notice be sent to someone else? Are there any deviating information or circumstances to be taken into account in addition to the tax information that we have provided here? Was the tax expert helpful in preparing the tax return? Is there a cross-border tax planning used? If any of these are applicable for you, select yes. If not, which would be applicable for most people, then simply click no in all of them and proceed further. Here we provide our current tax office. So wherever you're living at the moment, you select the tax office for that city. In the next option, if you have moved from another city, then you can select the option or the finance arm of that specific city. Next, you provide your tax number and the identification. This is going to be the 11-digit number that you should have as well. So provide those and proceed further. Next, you provide the information for your bank account. If you're not in Germany anymore, you can select this option and provide the IBAN for a foreign institute. If you're living in Germany, then provide the IBAN number of a domestic institute. If you are the account holder, then select this option. If you are using the account number for someone else, you can add the name of the person that is having this account number. Select that and proceed further. In this section, you can provide the title for your name. So if you're a doctor, you can provide doctor here. If not, then no. In case you are submitting this tax return for someone else who has passed away, you can select this option, yes or no, provide the details. So in most cases, no. And here you can provide your phone number and then proceed further. It's not over. Finally, you can click here to say that you have provided all of the information correctly and none of the statements that you've provided in this tax return software are false. Select that and click on further. So next, we had selected the smart check. This checks for your case, and if there are any problems, you can click on Start Smart Select. The smart check will help you process any false information or incorrect or missing information within your tax return application. So here we can see that we have a missing IBAN number. There might be a problem for the maintenance. Cryptocurrency, you're trying to sell 0.01 Bitcoin. However, I only have 0.001 Bitcoin. This means I had an incorrect addition to the cryptocurrency section, which I can edit or I can choose to ignore. Then there are some additional recommendations from the software. For example, income-related expenses, household and handiwork services, and many other. Now, these are the recommendations from the Smart Steuer or Smart Check from Smart Steuer. So on the top, we can see that our estimated return would be 2,556 euros based on our provided information. You can do all of this calculation up till this point free of cost. If you want to submit your tax return, next you would have to create an account with Smart Steuer, create an account, and once you've created an account, you would have to pay the 39.99 euros for the software to submit your tax return. Once you have registered and paid for the fees for Smart Steuer, you can easily submit the tax return and submit it automatically to the Finanzamt. Thank you very much. I know this has been a very long video. Obviously, submitting a tax return in Germany is a very complicated topic and there are many things that can be covered. I tried to cover as many things as I could in this video, but as you know, every individual case is separate from every other person. If you have any questions, please write in the comments below. Click here if you want to know more about maintenance declaration and how you can support your family. And here if you want to get started with investing in Germany. So thanks for watching. Bleib gesund and I'll see you in either of these two videos.